What's up guys, it's your boy Rich. So I thought we'd check out my Girard-Perregaux Vintage 1945 and see what regrets I might have from trading my Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso. Let's go. So before we start talking about my GP Vintage 1945, I thought I'd start with a little story time or a backstory of how I ended up with my Vintage 1945. And I've had this for at least, I would say, 12 years or so, and that was still the time during that big watch era, right? Where remember, where all watches were 44 millimeters or above, and Panerai was at its height and just the most coveted watch at that time. But still, I was looking for something smaller, and I was looking for a rectangular watch. And to me, the epitome of a rectangular watch was the Reverso, with maybe the Cartier Tank as a distant second, but the Reverso was always my grail watch, even back in the day. But the one that I actually owned was a three-hander. It wasn't the exact model that I wanted. The exact model that I wanted was a grand version, and it had a moon phase and a power reserve indicator on that. But it was also significantly more, but maybe not as much as I thought. It was only about $1,500 more, and I didn't splurge. And I say only $1,500 because it's certainly gone up in value. And had I bought that watch, I am feeling 1,000% confident that I wouldn't be making this video right now, because I wouldn't have this watch because I would have kept that Reverso. But I didn't, and so we're making this video. It was a simple three-hander, but it just didn't fit me properly. You know, the Reverso would always just fit on my wrist, sort of crooked. It just was never straight. And every time I tried to reverse it to the other side, flip it to the other side, it would always scratch it at the corners. So I took it to the AD, and I wanted to know why it was just scratching. Maybe mine just wasn't aligned properly. But he did acknowledge that that's an issue, but he never actually directly said, yes, that's an issue. His response was, well, it's not supposed to happen. It's sort of like a wink and a nod. So it just didn't fit my wrist. So I sold it, and I didn't lose any money from that Reverso, and I ended up here. So one of the things we talk about when we're talking about spending a lot of money on a high-end watch or a watch with heritage is we usually get our money back, right? That's what we hear about. Well, you know, why would I want to buy a micro brand when I'll only get on $1,000 watch, maybe a couple $100 back for it, when, you know, if I purchase a high-end watch, I'm always going to get some thousands of dollars for it. Well, there's some truth to it, but not every Rolex model, not every Patek is going to get you $18 million. But for the most part, we won't lose that much money on a steel Rolex. And that's the case with the Reverso. The Reverso's values have gone up significantly, whereas my GP Vintage 1945 has not. It never really retained its retail value. The retail price on this at the time with the steel bracelet was around $11,700, and I eventually switched it on to the GP alligator strap. But I did take this in because I was kind of curious if I wanted to keep this or if I wanted to sell this in favor of getting the Reverso that I wanted. And so guess what? How much do you think I was offered for this by another boutique who buys watches? Well, I was offered about $3,500 to $4,000. And granted, that was only really the first round. It really wasn't a serious rounds of negotiation. That was the first offer. I didn't take it because obviously it was just too big of a loss. But that was a rough figure that I knew that I could get for this at that time, which wouldn't have been anywhere near the Reverso by the time I considered selling this back for my Reverso. So, you know, I don't quite understand why GP's resale values aren't as strong. I mean, they're owned by the Kering Group. I believe they're still owned by the Kering Group. And the Kering Group has a lot of different luxury companies under it. So I just think that marketing is really has been a real issue for GP. And I just don't think they know what to do or how to properly market these watches. Because I think we can all agree that a GP is every bit as respected as a Reverso. I mean, they just make really great watches, and this watch has been outstanding to me. So that was sort of the financial and backstory of how I ended up with the GP. But the watch itself, I have to say, I actually find the dial much more striking and, to my taste, than a lot of the reversals. I really like that guilloche on the center. That is not printed. That is all done by hand. I think the dial is just very striking. I like the placement of the date window, the subdial for the seconds hand, the convex curve of the case, this in-house movement, which has been very reliable and accurate to me. It's just a really great watch. But again, I did have some regrets over the Reverso, and I don't know if it was necessarily, actually I do know, it wasn't particularly that Reverso that I had that I missed. More so of the brand. I like JLC, and I thought that was just a very great brand to me, especially at that time where I bought more into the whole romantic notion of wanting to have a brand with a great reputation, a brand with great DNA. It doesn't really matter to me so much anymore because it hasn't really proven to be all that. But the GP brand is every bit, as I said, very respected. I just, I just felt that the Reverso was not for me at that time, that particular model, which was just a three-hander. But again, if I had the grand model with those complications, I feel really confident that that is one that I would still have today. But again, I really enjoy this. I think this dial really suits my taste. And worth noting, when I did sell the Reverso, the buyer actually tried to tell me that was a good decision because the Reverso is not a younger man's watch, where the GP is a little bit younger, a little fresher than the Reverso. It didn't really matter to me at that time, so it had zero effect on me. But even when I was younger, I was still drawn to some of those vintage classic looks. So that was part of the allure of the Reverso as well. So that didn't make me feel, it didn't validate my selling of that Reverso. But like I said, I got my full money back on that. So a little bit of a lesson learned on that. But it's also a point where, as I touched on, not every brand is going to net you a lot of money that some of us expect. Even though I could get, let's say, $3,500 or $4,000 for this, I still had to spend several $1,000s to get that amount back. In this case, I can see that money coming in handy one day, maybe if in a pinch, I might need a few $1,000s. I know I could get that for this, although it would be at a full loss, but that is a few $1,000s that would be available to me. However, one of the things that is a problem with that is you have to, like I said, spend several $1,000s to get back a few $1,000s or a couple $1,000s. So that's something that is worth noting before we just automatically claim that every high-end watch is going to be worth it as an investment. Watches, first of all, are a very poor investment. I just don't advise people going into the watch hobby to try to make money, because we hear the stories about, for example, Paul Newman's Daytona selling for $18 million. Those are just rare occurrences. There's a lot of other better investments than watches. So, I still don't go into watches with that investment thinking that, well, one day I might flip it. Is it nice to know that there is some value to it? Sure. But, like I said, I'm not a chronic flipper. I've done it only a couple times. And I think overall I probably broke even on that. I didn't really lose money, but this is a long story about how I ended up with my GP from the Reverso. So I thought we might take a moment to enter dreamland. So what if somebody offered the Grand Reverso with the moon phase and the power reserve indicator for a straight up swap with my GP? Would I take that offer? Well, obviously I would be leaning towards yes, but I'm not so sure that I would jump to yes even before that question is answered. I think it would be something that I would think about, but definitely leaning towards, because that whole notion of wanting a Jaeger-LeCoultre kind of wore off on me a little bit in terms of that outweighing a Girard-Perregaux. I just don't think that carries that kind of clout with me anymore. The Reverso still is a watch that I would really love to have. So long story or long answer short, I probably would take that trade. But we're back in the real world, and unless that actually happens, I'm actually quite happy, and I really appreciate GP, and I really do appreciate wearing my 1945. If I don't consider the financial gains or the whole financial aspect of the resale value, then I think I can continue to really appreciate owning this watch, because this watch actually gives me great pleasure. It's a very striking watch to me and it's really been great to me. So since we're in the real world, I think I'm going to continue to be happy with my GP. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you the next time. What's up, guys? It's your boy Rich. Let's go check out the What's up, guys? It's your boy Rich. Let's go check out my Girard